Welcome back to the Buildwriting podcast, the show where we explore the craft, business, and journey of creative writing. Today's episode is for writers who have ever asked questions like, where should I submit my work? How do literary magazines actually choose pieces? And what makes one publication the right fit over another? Joining us today is Becky Tuch, a longtime voice in the literary magazine space. Becky founded the Review, spent years covering literary magazines, interviewing editors, studying submission practices, and helping writers better understand the publishing world. She now runs Lit Mag News, continuing her work of connecting writers with insights, opportunities, and conversations happening across literary publishing. In this conversation, we're exploring what Becky has learned from years inside the literary magazine ecosystem, how writers can make smarter submission decisions, what editors are really looking for, and where literary magazine publishing may be headed next. Becky, welcome to the Buildwriting podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. For listeners discovering your work for the first time, what drew you into the world of literary magazines? Because it's quite specific.
It is specific, and I think so. I started a website called the Review in 2008. And at the time, there really wasn't any resource for writers to get more in-depth information about literary magazines. So I'm a fiction writer myself, and I think it came from my own frustration of not having any information about these magazines. At the time, there was like a big book called Writer's Digest Guide that I think is actually still being published, but like every listing was the same. Every magazine, there were hundreds of magazines, and they all said, we want new and established writers, which told you very little about the specific thing that the magazine, that the editors were actually looking for. So I created a site. I felt like there needed to be more in-depth, more in-depth views of these magazines. So I created a site and we reviewed the issues, issue by issue. And we interviewed editors, and there were other aspects of the site, but those were the central parts of it to really give writers more information about what these magazines do.
Yeah, I saw online that you sold the review to I think a college or so.
Yes, I sold it in 2019. Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, and when I first saw it, if I didn't know better, I would have thought that you were done with the lit mag space and you're moving to something different. But then you went on to start Lit Mag News.
Right. Yeah, I thought I was done with it too. And then I just felt like I wanted another project. I write fiction, short stories and novels, but that's very kind of isolating work, and you're not really part of a community. You may have like a writing workshop or something like that, but I wanted to be part of larger conversations that were happening about literary magazines and giving writers that information. So in 2020, I couldn't stay away, and then I started Lit Mag News.
I guess you thought you were done, but literary magazines was not done with you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to literary magazines, and sometimes they say literary journals, many writers they see literary magazines only as places to submit work. What do you think they often miss about the role literary magazines play? Because usually it's just try to publish your work.
I mean that's part of it, and that's a big part of it. They're places to publish your work. They're also places to find great reading. I mean that's always a concern with literary magazines, that not enough people are reading them, and I think it's very important for writers to start to like build a list of magazines that you actually enjoy reading, as well as things that you would actually like to see your work in.
Well, because every time the literary magazine is published, from my experience, maybe because I'm a writer and that's what I'm searching for, but it's always call for submissions, submit your work. And in rare instances to you, except maybe when you just want to read the work of the magazine to see the style and see if it's the right fit for your work. Other than that, nobody really talks about, you need to read literary magazines, you need to follow these magazines and see the stories they put out there.
Yeah, I mean, there are some writers, it's a small group, but there are some writers that do subscribe to magazines and read them pretty regularly. I've been reading, I find it sort of more satisfying and more informative to read the anthologies, like the best of anthologies. And those are all they get their work from literary magazines, and so you can get kind of like a broad overview of the journals, and the stories in there are usually phenomenal.
Okay. From your experience, both as a writer and someone covering the literary magazine space, what separates a thoughtful submission from one that's clearly missed the mark? I mean, you talk to editors all the time.
Yeah. I think it's it's different for poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. And as a
Mm,
fiction writer, I sort of grasp it more easily when editors are talking about this. But I think there are a lot of common kind of places where writers go wrong. And I think one is that they have too much backstory early in a story. So they'll introduce a character, they'll introduce a situation, and then suddenly they'll be describing
mm,
how the people met or how they got there. They end up being too much in the character's head, and they don't really move the story forward. So I think that's usually like a kind of pitfall where an editor is like maybe excited about a story at the beginning, and then it kind of starts to fall flat because the writer retreats into the character's head too much.
yeah,
I, endings are also, I've heard from a lot of editors that endings are very hard, and that writers usually like you need to deliver something at the end. There has to be some kind of payoff. And so that can be a place where editors kind of
yeah. What about
will sort of
nonfiction?
nonfiction. I think something I've heard editors say is that they get frustrated when there's no larger meaning applied to a particular work. So a writer will talk about their trip. Let's say they talk about a road trip they took, but they don't kind of find the larger significance of that. Like, what is the meaning of it? It can't just be
Yeah.
an interesting trip that the writer took. There has to be some kind of like larger message or moral or meaning. And so writers who are doing nonfiction need to think about
Mm. Oh, so when you talk about nonfiction, you're talking about essays and
that. Yeah, like usually personal essay, memoir, something based on personal experience.
there's a dilemma that writers always face. You want to send your work out there, and you know that the chances of you probably getting published, there's so many factors that come into play.
Hmm.
Your work might not be the right fit for the magazine, even though you have a great work, and you're like, okay, I'm a writer. I write. That's what I do. But then now I have to like submit my work to 50 magazines. I have to make sure that there are no simultaneous submissions. That's a different job on its own. Like, I didn't sign up for that. Is there a way to like to navigate or probably escape that place? Or is that like something we have to go through if we want to publish our work on Literary Max?
I mean, if you're willing to pay for it, there's always, there are services. There's actually a wonderful service called Submit It, where I'm
Yeah.
friends with the founder of that service. I've actually had him on as a guest at Lit Mag News many times. He's a great editor. And he's done a few of my stories and sent
Wow.
them out, and they've found homes. So if you want to hire someone, to do that for you, that's always an option. I think most writers, myself included, cannot cannot afford to hire someone. And if that's the case, I think, yeah, I mean, and most writers will find that that is part of building a career. Like if you just want to write and write for yourself, that's wonderful. But if you actually want to have a career as a writer, you need to be able to send out your work and do the research. And I think that's part of you learn through the
Yeah.
process. You learn what the magazines are publishing, you look at what they're actually doing, and you try to figure out like what kind of work you're writing and where your work might fit in these magazines. So it is educational and can inform your work. But yeah, unfortunately, if you don't like that part of it, I think there's really no way around it.
Yeah. Do you write fiction, short story, flash fiction, personal essays, and when you write it, you're like, okay, awesome work, brilliant, and you do some editing, and you're like,
Mm.
okay, where should I send it to now? I've cooked up something magical. Where should I send it? Or do you sit down and say, okay, which of my what magazines are looking for work, and then say, okay, what can I write to fit into this magazine? What's the approach you use?
Oh, I definitely write my piece first. I would love to feel like this is magical and this is a wonderful piece.
Yeah,
I don't always get to that level of, I feel like this is the best I can do, or I do really like this a lot, and I hope an editor likes it too. Sometimes I feel like this is magical, but always the order is to write the piece first and then send it to magazines. I never look at a magazine and try to match a work to what they do because it's very hard to do that.
yeah, yeah. In my head, I'm just thinking of an example. I mean, it's like it's like if you wanted the dates, you're like, okay, how can I be awesome? And you go around, you say, oh yeah, would you like to be my girlfriend and around, and they do say no. Some say, and then you eventually say the person that say, I like you for who you are, and say yes. But
Hmm.
then it's the other approach will be how can I become the person that this person wants? And you try to change yourself,
Yeah,
and it's like
right,
not really. It's like it's just fake.
right. I mean, you can do it. Like, I think it is a good analogy, but I think with writing, it's a little different because you can just as an exercise try to match. You could say like, oh, it looks like Kenyon Review really likes this kind of work. I'm going to try to
Yeah,
write a story that matches the aesthetic of Kenyon Review, but knowing that the odds are that they're going to reject it and that they won't recognize it as a story for their magazine. And then, but knowing you just did it as an exercise to like broaden your craft and improve your craft. So it's not a terrible thing to do, but otherwise, yeah, I agree with you that you shouldn't be trying to change your style, change your voice just to try to get into a magazine.
I mean there are exceptions. I think, for instance, there are magazines that publish team submissions, and the team changes every every time they do calls for submissions. And so in that
Hmm.
regards, you would have to sit down and write a story that fits that theme, or
Yeah,
maybe you might just have a story that already fits the theme before they even talked about it, which is rare.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's a good exercise for you, like if they have a theme about flowers, like, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah,
spend 30 minutes and write a story about flowers and then look, you've got a new story and about flower, that's great. But just don't go into it feeling sure that it will land at this magazine.
yeah. You talked about getting a service for
Mm,
the submission and also editing your work, because we write it and then we're like, oh, it's awesome, but sometimes it's not really, having someone who sees and thinks like the editor, it's also nice. But what about the cost? I mean, in most of us, it's not like we're getting paid submitting this work. We're just trying to like establish a career, out of it. But
yeah.
it's not the thing
Yeah, I mean,
that
the
pays.
cost, right. The cost is not possible for a lot of people. So I think writers who pay for those kinds of services have full-time jobs, maybe they're
Yeah,
retired, so they have some income coming in. But yeah, if you're just like a newer, struggling writer, you don't have a lot of money, then it's not going to be, it's going to be several hundreds of dollars. I think getting an editor is always a good idea because you'll learn a lot about your work. But you can also join a writing workshop, get a friend to look at it. There are ways to do it without spending a lot of money.
what do you? I know that of course the strategy it's a bit different, but what would you recommend if you had to choose? Would you do the spray and pray approach, or sitting down and say, okay, I want to submit to the Kenyon, I want to submit to these magazines, and these are the ones I really want to submit to, and look at your work and then submit to them and wait and hope they accept your work, or just submit to as many as you can and see which one clicks?
Yeah, I always advise writers to start with your most preferred magazines because if you submit to like 100 magazines at once and you get an acceptance from a magazine that you're not that excited about, you're going to be in kind of a bad situation because you might still be waiting to hear from
Yeah,
another magazine that you're more excited about. And you can't say to that first magazine, wait, hold on, I'm still
yeah,
waiting to hear. They won't like that at all.
yeah,
Um, so what I do and what I always tell writers to do is submit their work in batches of maybe 5 to 10 at once and start with the magazines that are, you're most excited about, or you most want to break into. And those magazines, they may take a while to get back. So wait however long you're comfortable waiting. And then, keep, if you're being rejected or you're not hearing back, then move on and submit to the next batch.
Yeah. And when you talk about picking the magazines, how should writers think about the fit when deciding where their work belongs?
Think about defeat, like
No,
rejection.
fits, like if your work fits or aligns to be on the
Oh,
magazine.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's a really good question. I think, thinking about it's kind of like a gut instinct thing. Like if you read the work, first of all, ask yourself if you like it, because
Okay.
if you don't like what they're publishing, then there's no point in publishing with them. So just on a basic level, like, do I like this? Do I respect it? Would I be honored to have my work alongside these other pieces, or would I be embarrassed? And if you're not getting a good feeling from the magazine, then definitely don't submit there. And it doesn't matter how prestigious that magazine is. Like if you don't like the work, then don't submit there. But then yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like a gut feeling. Like does what they publish sound like my writing? Is it very, if you write stuff that's very driven by voice, is the stuff that they publish very driven by voice? If you're writing, if you're an international writer, like, do they publish a lot of international writers? Like, so you just kind of like get a kind of instinctive feel for what they like. It's not, unfortunately, it's not a perfect science. Like, you can't pin it down exactly. So you do have to just kind of guess and send your work out. Um,
Yeah. Oh, is there like a cheaper option? Because with the the literary magazine submission process, I like to think of it as you're finding the magazines to submit to, and then you are then doing the submission and then waiting. So, is there like a process for researching these publications so we can find and see them without having to spend hours, finding this magazine?
There are resources. So there's like chill subs,
Okay.
and there's also Duotrope, and both of those are databases, and you can just go to the database and look at all those magazines, and you know, if you can be quite productive, like in an hour, and send to maybe 20 journals, depending how carefully you research them and like how much time you invest in each one. But I mean, I wouldn't rush the submit. Like, I honestly feel like the submission process is part of the fun. Like, the hard thing is writing the story. The hard thing is like doing the writing. Submitting it is like that's your reward. Like, you just get to, put on some music or whatever, put on a TV emote, and just
Yeah.
like it doesn't require a lot of mental effort. You're just reading, doing a little research, and listen to some show online while you're doing it,
Yeah.
and bang out maybe 5 submissions in an hour or more, and you're good to go. So I wouldn't stress too much about the submissions process. It can be time consuming, but the more familiar you become with literary magazines and the more you get the hang of it, it becomes really easy.
Mm, yeah. I mean, if you put it that way, so what you're suggesting is, batch the submission and probably stack the task on something that doesn't require that much mental approach to do, like,
Mhm.
watching a series. Now, if that's
Yeah.
their thing.
Yeah, I mean, I may not, maybe if you have like the series on in the background and you're, like nothing that's going to be too consuming, but like some good music. People have submissions parties where you get
Yeah.
together with friends, and you can have a beer if that's your thing, and you're just kind of cheering each other on as you submit, and it can be a social thing. You find 4 friends that are also trying to submit to literary magazines, get together once a month and just send out as many pieces as you can. So that part, like, I mean, I find that it's stressful. It's definitely stressful, and it can feel annoying because it is kind of like secretarial work. But
Yeah.
I mean, you should be excited because you finished you finished the story, the poem, the essay, and you have something to send out into the world, and that's kind of part of the fun.
Yeah. Oh. After speaking with editors over the years, what are the patterns you've seen in what they value?
I think a lot of editors, like when I say, what are you most looking for? They say voice. Like voice is really important to
What's
editors.
that?
Yeah, I guess it's a good, like they always say they want like a fresh voice or a strong voice, an
Yeah.
authentic voice. Um, and I think I take that to mean that they're probably not looking for genre fiction or work that sounds like, if it sounds like a kind of mystery or like something that you would see in, like the supermarket, like a
Yeah.
kind of more commercial bestseller, that's not what they're looking for. So they're looking for writing that's more literary, that pays a lot of attention to language, um, that's very maybe psychologically nuanced. So that's something that I see. Yeah, what does voice mean? It's hard to know, but I think um, it just means like that there's a very clear attention to language.
Yeah. Because a follow-up question I have is that oftentimes you listen to these editors and they tell you try to read our magazine before you submit to it,
Yeah,
and yet they tell us that they're looking for a different voice, and I'm like, if I'm
right.
reading your magazine, and because if I'm reading your magazine, and I'm looking at the pattern, so if my what if my I guess I could say if there is a pattern to the kind of work you submit, then it means that even though my work doesn't fit that pattern, it's the voice is not exactly what you want, even though the voice
Yeah,
itself it's not genre or that kind of
right.
commercial kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say like it's really not a perfect science, so don't get too hung up on trying to find the exact right magazine. I mean, one thing that's great about submitting to magazines is that you're allowed to submit simultaneously, so you should be submitting to many, many magazines at one time.
Yeah,
And if you're new to submitting, you can use a resource like Duotrope or Chill Subs, and you can see what their acceptance rate is. And if you're brand new to submitting, I might encourage you to focus on magazines with a higher acceptance rate. And then you won't feel so like bogged down, so worried about trying to like match it perfectly.
yeah.
You can just like, enjoy the process of submitting.
When a lot of us writers, we've gotten a lot of heartbreak notices and rejections from editors. So every
Mhm.
time we hear the word editor, we kind of, our mood kind of changes a bit.
Yeah.
So, what are the misconceptions writers tend to have about editors and acceptance decisions?
Oh, I think a big misconception is that it actually means something to get a rejection letter. Like it really means nothing. Like it's no reflection. I've had so many like way more rejections than I've had acceptances, and that is totally normal. And I just had a story accepted at a pretty nice magazine that I've been submitting to for many, many years.
Wow,
And all
congrats.
the they sent me, but this whole time they sent me just form rejection after form rejection. So I had no way of knowing if I was close, if I would ever be published in this magazine. And then one day they just accepted it. And the story they accepted was one that had been rejected by many other magazines. So
Yeah,
you really, you don't know at
what's
all like what a rejection means. And so when you get a rejection letter, like just delete it, mark it in your wherever you're keeping a record of such things and then move on. Some people like to, and I like to do this too if I have time, the
yeah,
moment I get a rejection, submit to 3 other magazines. So you just feel like you're keeping moving things forward. But you really cannot read anything into it. They're so meaningless. You don't know what's motivating their decision. You don't even know how carefully they read it. And you just have to, keep submitting to that magazine if you think your work would be a good fit for them and keep sending out that story. I mean, some writers get an acceptance after 60 rejections, and then finally the story lands at a great magazine. And so that's how it is. That's how it's always been. It's not fun, but you just cannot take it personally.
yeah. What's the name of the magazine? you made the reference?
The one that just accepted the story, Chicago Quarterly Review.
Wow, congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I was quite stunned, to be honest. I was really, I mean, I've been
Yeah,
submitting to them for a very long time. So
yeah.
at least 6 years, at least.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I just like every time I had a story, I would just send it to them and I'd get a form rejection, and then this one just clicked, and you just it's not like I did anything, like I didn't meet the editor personally. I think that's also a misconception that people have, that it's all everyone knows each other and it's very,
Yeah,
and in my experience that isn't true. I mean, I interview editors all the time and they reject my work all the time. Like
yeah,
it doesn't knowing an editor personally doesn't change things, and you don't need to know an editor personally to get your work accepted. It's just persistence and persistence.
what if it's my aunt that's publishing the magazine? I'm just
Mhm.
kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed this, Becky. Sometimes you see some writers and you read in the magazine, for example, Granta, and you notice s- recurring names, their
Mm.
work that's published. What would you say about that? Is it that they're just good writers, and that's why their work gets accepted all the time, or it's because maybe they're big names and that's why their work is
Yeah.
accepted? I mean, what's
I
the
don't know.
what's the
I don't know
explanation?
what it means. Yeah, I mean, it could mean, I don't know. I was actually just thinking this because I came across a very prestigious, difficult to get into magazine, and there was a famous writer in the magazine, and I was wondering what the process was. Like, did she just send it to the editors and they were like,
Yeah,
okay, great, or did she use the same submissions channel as everybody else? And
like the
I think it depends on the magazine. Some editors will say like, "Oh yeah, we have like famous people sending us work, all the time," and they are doing things kind of like ethically, and some magazines are actively soliciting work from more famous writers, but overall, I would say like I wouldn't let it discourage you, and I wouldn't try to read too much into it. I would just say like, well, what does that mean for you? It means that you've just got to keep sending out your work and sending out your work. Like it's, don't let some theory kind of start to bring you down, like, oh, they all know each other and it's all kind of like an insider click. And
yeah,
it may be true. It probably is true to some degree, but it's not something that you have control over.
yeah,
So, do what you can control, which is you're making your writing as strong as it can be, and, you know, being pretty persistent about sending it out.
yeah. What do you think of the demand and supply? So what I mean by demand and supply is a literary magazine that's not maybe gets maybe 500 people to visit the site every month,
Yeah.
and they post a call for submissions and maybe 50 or 20 people submit. And if I
Um,
submit my work, even though it's not like the best of the best of the best work, I mean the competition is kind of less compared to a magazine that gets about 20,000 submissions, and
yeah.
it's just crazy. What do you think about that?
Mhm. I mean, it depends what your goals are. If your goal is like, it really depends what you're trying to achieve by publishing in literary magazines. So I think some people submit to literary magazines because all they want is a place to publish them. All they want is maybe like an online platform that will publish their work and they can show it to their friends and family. And I think that's great. And I've had works where I've felt like, you know what? I'm not interested. I don't need to publish this in the Paris Review. I really just like, I want this out. I don't want to wait a long time, and I want to be able to share it with people. And so I've submitted it to places that have a higher acceptance rate, and I know get back to you very quickly. And I think that's great. And then I think with other stories, you may feel like this is like the best thing that I've ever written, and I want to submit it to the most competitive, most prestigious place. And I think that's great too. So I always tell writers like it's very important to decide what you want to get out of submitting to literary magazines, because I think too many writers, as I have done in the past, like think I just want to be famous. Like I just want
Yeah,
to get my work out there. And it's not necessarily the best strategy because you're competing with, it's so competitive and you're going to get a lot of rejections and it may be setting yourself up for failure when you're in kind of a vulnerable position because you're still building your career, you're still building your confidence as a writer. So I think starting with smaller places, starting with places that maybe that aren't as competitive, I think that's wonderful. And then start to like build up your portfolio, and then you can have, if you have a website, you can link to those places on your website. So I think that's great.
Oh, what do you think of um the 100 rejections challenge?
Um, I haven't done it. It's helped a lot of writers. And I think there is something to be said for just like sending out a lot of work and trying to not be too, emotional about it and taking your
Yeah.
feelings out of the process and just kind of like sending out a lot of work. I've also heard writers say like if you're seeking rejections, you're gonna get rejection. Like, why would I do that? uh,
Uh,
I don't know. I think it's great if it helps you to keep your work out there and to keep circulating and to like kind of keep your spirits up as you're submitting. I think that's great. Um, I personally haven't done it.
do you count your acceptance?
Do I count my acceptances? Well, I keep track of them. I don't know if I count them. I mean, they're so like spread out over so many years. Yeah, so I don't really, they're just there.
What's if you were to give me a number, an estimate, just guess, how many would you say
Oh, well,
over the
I've been
years?
doing this for so long. So I think, I mean, I know that there's I wouldn't say it's even like the number is that high necessarily, maybe close to uh about 20, I think, which isn't really that many necessarily, like for the amount of time, because I've also like taken long periods off from writing stories and submitting, and I've worked on longer projects, and so yeah, maybe it's about 20, I think. But some writers have like 50 or like hundreds of acceptances. So, yeah, I don't know. I've never actually counted, but it's probably it's probably about 20.
Yeah, you might be shocked. It might be more. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've watched this space evolve for years. I mean, you started the review in 2008.
Hmm.
That's a long time. What are the
Yeah.
changes that you're noticing, right now in the space?
Well, right now, like at this moment in time, I think AI is like the
Yeah.
biggest concern for people. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you've been following the whole scandal with Granta, and they just awarded a prize to someone, and the story has turned out to be AI, or people like very strongly suspect that it was written with AI. So I think that's it's raising all these questions about like why are these editors publishing AI written work? How are they not able to detect it? And then like how do we as writers handle it when there's like a kind of everybody's trying to call out each other for using AI? You don't want to like
Yeah.
throw accusations around, so I think that's a very kind of almost I find it fascinating and weird and interesting. So I think that's like a big development. And then a lot of lit mags sadly seem to be closing in the past
Oof.
few. So that's another kind of they always close and new ones open, but there have been some big ones that have closed in the past few years. So that's pretty sad.
What would you say has been the major reasons why they closed?
Um, that's a great question. I think a lot of it is funding, and then
Yeah.
editors just get tired. Um, I have my own theories too, personally, which I think some it seems like it's kind of calmed down, but for a few years there it was like this culture of like calling out editors for everything that they were doing wrong. It was just like a very strong like cancel culture
Yeah.
world. And I think it was probably annoying to be an editor at that time because you're always worried about doing the wrong thing and offending the wrong person and saying the wrong thing. And then, why would you want to continue working in that environment? So I think a lot of it seemed to me that a lot of magazines were closing around that time, though they never said that was the reason, but that was what I imagined was happening. But I think it's also just financial challenges mostly.
Did you notice what happened to NaNoWriMo?
To NaNoWriMo. Yeah, with the AI.
Is it? Yeah, thought I thought they stopped NaNoWriMo. I don't know. I think maybe Fondy, but they didn't do NaNoWriMo last year, did they?
Yeah, my understanding was they stopped it because uh, NaNoWriMo had said they would accept AI written work as part of the like novel challenge. And then people just got really mad and there was all this outrage and backlash. And then so they just stopped it altogether.
Oh, I thought it was fun because I saw something. I didn't really follow or dig down the story. I just saw it and I was like, well, maybe they had funding challenge because usually it's usually
Yeah.
fun and fun. That's like the
Did you
main
ever
thing.
do it?
No, no, I didn't, I didn't have the stamina. I was like, and I was like,
Oh, you should. I mean, you don't really need them to,
that's
help you do
true.
it. You
And
should
now that
do it on your
NaNoWriMo has ended, maybe we should create our own NaNoWriMo because I always loved the idea of, NaNoWriMo challenge and the
Yeah.
community and all that. But I really don't know why they
I
stopped
think
because,
that's a great idea, actually. I would love to do that.
yeah,
You'd
probably
have to
we'll
like
call it
set
something else.
yeah, you could like call it, what if we did it in like September instead of November? So it's
So September, we'll
National.
call it Septorimo. Yeah,
Well, I actually really like that idea.
yeah,
Well, we'll talk about that after the interview.
yeah. Of course, of course, of course.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
that.
But
We'll figure out the logistics.
I think there's like a opportunity there to create something
Yeah,
um to kind of motivate people.
yeah. And I've also been thinking about specialized challenges for writers because NaNoWriMo is great and awesome. It's novels, right? It's awesome idea. But then what about you know as nonfiction writers, people writing essays, personal essays, memoirs. I feel like
Yeah,
the more specialized it is, the more the connection, the more it's easy to, the relatability
right,
when, you're bringing speakers, if you're doing workshops and all that, because now it's
right.
like, oh yeah, these are people writing memoirs and personal essays and things like that. Versus
Yeah,
when I'm trying to give advice, I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, if you're also doing an essay, it could work for you too. And it's like, this is not really for me.
right, right, right. That's a good, I mean, you could have like National Essay Writing Month.
Yeah.
Um,
That would be lovely. Yeah. So many
yeah.
things, and just have one for like, each quarter so that people are not overwhelmed. One will be in the 3 months, one will be memoir, the other one will be novel. And then
Hmm.
novel covers fiction, memoir covers non-fiction. But then there are non-fiction that are not memoirs. Because I feel like memoirs
Yeah.
are personal. I mean, we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's like more critical writing that it's like a, culture
Yeah.
events or cultural writing and
Yeah,
it's not
critical essays.
yeah.
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 So it has that community because you as you know, writing is it's lonely. It's like you just there with your
Hmm.
computer, right?
Yeah, no, you need some do. Some writers like that isolation, but I think most people probably need that support and the community for sure.
Yeah, and just the idea of knowing that there are other writers like me or working on something like this, that idea, it's like it's more than enough for most writers.
Hmm. Yeah. How is the Nigerian literary scene? Seems pretty vibrant if I just
Yeah, yeah,
from my perspective.
it seems, yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
There are a lot
But
of
we don't have as much literary magazines as the other parts of the world. I know every literary
yeah.
magazines claim to be international these days, but you and I know that
Mhm.
they always have a
Yeah.
place that they're operating from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the US definitely has the most literary magazines and the most MFA programs. I think that's a big
Yeah,
part of it. But it seems like the Nigerian lit mag scene is pretty active.
yeah. It is. It is. Well, so many things that could be.
Yeah.
So many things. Because every time I think of it, I'm like, oh, so many problems that solutions
Right.
could be worked
Right.
out of. Sometimes there are people who. That's the thing I love about NaNoWriMo. There are people who had this idea and thought of it one time or the other, but then someone went ahead and did it, and now it's like, well, yeah, I love that. I was
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good idea. It should be resurrected.
yeah, it should. Um, we talked about AI and we've talked about
Right.
NaNoWriMo and all the things happening. What excites you about the future of literary magazine?
Hmm. That is an interesting question. I think I just want to see more magazines publishing really good work. Like there's so much, yeah, I think just doing what so many of them have always done. Like there's nothing secret or, you know, like exclusive that you need some kind of passcode to add. Like I just want to keep seeing magazine. There's some magazines out there that are publishing just really good stories consistently, and I want to see that continue. I mean, it's very basic to my mind. Like what excites me is like just the work.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking in a sense when you publish your poetry, your poems, you publish your short fiction, and 2 years later the magazine goes defunct,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
a
Yeah.
unlike a book, you have the book and
Hmm.
different copies of the book, but with the magazine, except it's a print magazine, then I mean you could print a copy of it as a PDF, but
Right.
it just feels different.
Yeah, it's very disappointing when they close. Very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah, now that I said that, it just occurred to me that writers can over the years, take their works and create an anthology for themselves, and then publish that as a
Mhm.
book and make reference to the literary magazines we first published.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of writers do that. I think that's great. The challenge is finding readers and distribution and all that stuff, but I think that's great.
Hmm, the challenge. Phew, you're right. That's a battle on its own, and then you're done with that, and they're like, okay, yeah, how do we get people to
Right.
read it?
Right. Exactly. That is the big, yeah, that's the challenge.
Well, are there opportunities emerging writers may be overlooking right now?
I think it depends on the writer. Some writers might find that starting a Substack is a great avenue for them,
Yeah.
and they just can publish their work there, or they can use Substack to talk about, things that are of interest to them and not publish their poetry and other creative work there. Um, but yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, I think the system as it's been operating for so many years is pretty much how it is, how it continues to be, like go to Poets and Writers or find other resources where they announce calls for submissions and contests. Start with those and then just keep, broadening your knowledge of literary magazines and keep sending stuff out.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for that advice. I guess a different way to ask a previous question would be, what's a lesson from your years in this space, both as a writer and as um, the what would I call you now? I guess I could call you the editor of the Lit Magnus because you write your work there and you also accept guest posts there too. Kind of you're kind of like the watchman. You're monitoring and observing the space and say, oh, yeah, this is what's
Right,
happening here.
right,
uh,
right.
what's something you wish every writer knew about the space?
It's hard to answer that, I think, because it's hard to know what people already know or don't
No,
know about the thing. Like I think writers are coming into the space from all different levels of experience, and
yeah,
some are coming in from an MFA program, and they've been very uh professionalized. They've been trained to work hard and revise their pieces and submit them for publication. And some are coming to this space from another career and they're 70 years old and they're just starting the process of writing and sending their work out. And, I think, yeah, it really depends on what you already know about the
Yeah.
world of literary magazines. And I think the main thing is everyone has to start somewhere. So don't feel discouraged if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, well, I know literally nothing about the world of literary magazines. I think we all start somewhere and you just gradually build up your knowledge. And, it's generally a welcoming space. It's not always a welcoming space. Like, I don't want to make it sound very like touchy
Yeah.
feely, it's not like it's a professional space. It's competitive, and there is a lot of unfairness in it. There is a lot of friends publishing friends, and there's a lot of very good work that gets rejected, and
Yeah.
people get frustrated. It's not a perfect little community. It has a lot of flaws and a
Yeah.
lot of you know but I think the main thing is if you're just like focusing on your craft and trying to learn about literary magazines, then that's the thing that you need to be doing.
Mm. And you did touch on this question I want to ask, and but I feel I should ask it, and just as a way to round up the episode, and that is, what would you tell the writer who keeps receiving rejections,
Mm.
and they've submitted a lot, and no acceptances, and now they're at a point where they're questioning their work, they're questioning if their work is any good, or if they should even continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all been there. I would ask that writer where they're sending their work because it's very possible that they're sending their work to the wrong places. Where, like, if you're just starting out and you're sending your work to the Paris Review and Kenyon Review and the New Yorker, you're going to be rejected. Those magazines are so hard to break into. They accept less than 1% of submissions. So the first thing I would say to that writer is, are you submitting to places that are actually right for your level of skill? I mean, some writers have to take a hard look at their own skill and say, you know what, I love the craft, I'm doing my best, but I'm not
Yeah.
quite at the level of some of these top tier magazines. So I need to pull back and submit to places that are more open. There's so many places that are open to beginning writers or emerging writers. So I would really tell that person, like, take an honest look at where you're sending your work because you might be hurting yourself by sending your work to magazines that are just, they're not open to newer writers.
Yeah.
Um, and apart from that, I mean, I would say, yeah, you just have to, it's a really tough, it's like any business. It's like actors or artists or
Yeah.
musicians. I mean, we're not different from them. It's brutal, and you really do need to be able to withstand some rejection to get ahead. And so just keep working on your craft, keep looking for right magazines. Focus on the magazines that are actually looking for new writers, that have posted calls for submissions, that are seeking submissions, um, and you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah. And if everything else fails, start your own magazine and publish your work.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. There
Uh,
you go.
oh wow. There's a question. I know I said the previous question was the uh was the last question, but there's a question I feel deeply curious to ask you, and that's okay. It's why do you write?
Well, why do it's such a wonderful question. Someone asked me that once a few years ago, and I had a really hard time answering it. I don't know. I don't know. It's like something, I started writing when I was 8 years old, and I just loved it. And I love it. I mean, I just love writing. Like it's one of my favorite things to do. And yeah, I mean, it helps me a lot. It helps me feel like clarify my thoughts. It helps me like today, this morning, I was like, just write for 40 minutes and try to write a story. And I did. And I wrote it's not strong, but I wrote the draft of a full story. And it was like the best feeling. And I was like, whatever else happens today, like the rest of the day can like completely
I've
fall
conquered
apart.
the day.
Putting your workout in, you're like the
Yeah.
rest of the day can just completely fall apart, but I did this one thing and I feel awesome and like it's like my center of gravity, you know? And so yeah, I mean there's always the desire to reach people and connect with people, but I think first and foremost I just like I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So thank you
Thank you.
for the question. It's a
Thank
great
you so
question.
much, Becky.
Yeah, thank you.
Where can listeners learn more about the work you do and also connect with
Sure. So the Substack would be Litmag News. It's
you? Yeah.
litmagnews.substack.com. And yeah, you can always contact me there. You can send me direct messages or reach me on Gmail. I have a website, beckytuch.com, and you can find me.
Yeah, I'll put the links mentioned in the description so the listeners can click and go directly to the site. Thank you so much,
Great.
Becky, for sharing the
Thank
literary magazine wisdom. It's been a lovely conversation.
thank
Yeah,
you for the talk. It was fun.
yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for listening to Buildwriting. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and share it with a friend who loves poetry and creative writing. Leave us a quick review or rating. It really helps others find the show. You can also connect with me, and I'd love for you to subscribe to the newsletter. He's saying all the behind the scenes things I'm experimenting on and things I'm working on in terms of creative writing. Yeah, it'll mean a lot to me. And I shared the writing prompts, behind the scenes, speaks, and more. Yeah, a lot of things. And if you have any questions or ideas, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be sure to respond. Love to hear from you. Next week, we'll be diving into something really, really amazing. And you have to tune in next week to find out what that will be. Until next time, keep writing, keep building your craft. See you next time.